Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, Ewan from What Culture, joined today by Simon Gallagher.
Hello.
And Zoe Miss Kelly.
Hello.
To talk to you about Black Widow, because the first trailer dropped last week, I believe, and it's a bit of a doozy. I thought it was a very good trailer. Lots of interesting stuff revealed and also lots of stuff kept under wraps, which is also really refreshing considering most films these days just give you the entire plot in their first teaser. Also, thankfully, no teaser for the teaser for this trailer. There was none of that, we'll show you 5 seconds of the trailer before you get the trailer thing, which
You've no idea how much that annoys me.
it really annoys me as well. But yeah, we thought basically today we'd talk about our overall thoughts on the prequel so far and before release, and also, more importantly, Taskmaster, because the new villain in the film is Taskmaster. Obviously, one of the bigger Avengers characters in the comics, kind of both an anti-hero and an anti-villain, and their real name is Tony Masters, which is one of the best superhero secret identities ever.
It's very, very
Tony
good.
Masters. But the thing here is that obviously, you know, the identity is a bit of a mystery. They're keeping it under wraps. There are obviously different people who it may be. There is one prevailing theory so far amongst MCU fandom and different online circles, which we'll get to soon. But yeah, overall, what do we think of the prequel so far?
I'm very excited at what point it's actually at, because we see what appears to be a young Thaddeus Ross, who's Red Hulk, but he's quite young, which suggests that it's significantly
Is he quite young? I think that de-aging.
for Thaddeus Ross,
that's
right?
like 50s-ish,
That
isn't it?
de-aging has made him like has made him look like 25. But then it's just his face as a 50-year-old man. Still so weird.
I mean, we know for a fact that the film is set in between Civil War and Infinity War, with flashbacks going to before the first Iron Man, I believe. So I imagine that Thaddeus Ross scene probably picks up with that. And I'm with you. I think I'm most excited to see the stuff that's in the 90s and the early 2000s. But yeah, you can continue if you like.
I'm interested basically just to see sort of where it cuts in and where it cuts out, because there's a lot of Black Widow stuff, and basically none of it has been used in the MCU. So they have, God, they could make like an entire, like 100-hour epic, but they obviously won't be. But what they will be doing is using the exact best bits. So I am kind of interested with that. Also the stuff with Yelena.
Yes, Yelena Belova.
Particularly interested in that.
I'm very excited about her. Include Florence Pugh is fantastic, and I think everything behind the scenes on this film has me so excited, because you have Kate Shortland who's directing. Josh goes on about Bowen syndrome literally all the time. I'm very excited to actually watch this, and obviously, you know, the cast kind of speaks for itself. You've got David Harbour and Rachel Weisz as well, who is just, it's fantastic to see her out about and doing stuff again. So yeah, cast-wise, I'm very excited. What about you, Si?
I am very excited. It's interesting that you say there's loads of story, because there was that rumor that this is not just one film. So it could be that there is a trilogy of films or a couple of films that happen before Infinity War, which would probably hyperextend that period of time. But the MCU now doesn't really care about time frames anymore. So it could be. They could just do a whole thing where it's Black Widow and Friends versus the Red Room, and that would go over 3 films. I mean, I would quite like it not to do that.
Yeah.
But I would also quite like to see more Black Widow.
I agree. I think the issue here is that even though I'm definitely excited for the film and I'm happy that it's happening, it does feel as though it's 10 years late in terms of when we all thought, when everyone was really begging for a Black Widow film to come out, and those calls kind of fell on deaf ears over at Marvel for some bizarre reason. Like Perlmutter. But on the upside, you know, it is finally happening. And if there were to do more prequels, I'd be very excited about that, because I love the first Avenger and I love the Winter Soldier, and I love my favorite Captain America and Black Widow comics kind of intersect, because it all comes from that Ed Brubaker kind of school of thought, where you really have the homages to Jim Steranko, who did the old Nick Fury comics in the 60s, and then also integrating that with the old war comics, the 40s, and it's just a great time. So if they were able to do that, I don't necessarily think that the gap between Civil War and Infinity War is a great choice.
No.
But at the same time, if it means we get to see more flashbacks to, you know, maybe S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Cold War, which we saw briefly in Ant-Man, that would be pretty exciting too. And obviously the fact that they're fleshing out the different national heroes as well. Red Guardian is a definite exciting factor for me, because hopefully in the future that means we'll get the Captain America of Canada, who is of course the Guardian, and maybe we'll get Captain Britain or Union Jack. I don't know. I'm pretty down for it either way. But yeah, basically in terms of Black Widow, I want to ask you guys about Taskmaster, because the first trailer keeps our identity under wraps. I think everyone was a little bit kind of underwhelmed by the look, if I'm being honest.
Not the strongest thing I've seen in my life.
It's definitely
It's a little bit Power Rangers.
Yes, yeah, it is. It kind of reminds me of like one of those, you know, the seventh Ranger that they would introduce halfway through the season because toy sales were lagging. And Yeah, it's frustrating. I did actually get very excited when they showed them wielding the Hawkeye's bow, because that implies that they've gone up against Hawkeye in the past. I'm very much here for Hawkeye, even though it pains everyone to see that and me reiterate it every single day. So the fact that they can flesh out that element is pretty cool. Maybe we'll get a throwback to Budapest. Maybe Budapest was them going up against Taskmaster for the first time, and that's why they're able to use the bow. Well, I have no idea.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because in the exchange where Black Widow and Hawkeye talk about Budapest, Black Widow's like, this is just like Budapest and like exciting and good, and Hawkeye says, you and I remember Budapest very differently, as if maybe she won and he lost, so that's where the bow came from. Who knows?
That'd be particularly interesting. I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm looking into this, and obviously, Zoe, you'll know, having read the comics as well, that the Taskmaster is kind of, he reminds me very much of, what's the DC robot? Is it Amazo who learns everyone's things and then goes, yeah. Kind of reminds me of that. It's a good power. I find it's one of those powers that I feel as though it's done to death these days. But at the same time, I'm always very excited about it, because it forces the heroes to obviously confront them in a different way, and it leads to all sorts of really cool action set pieces that they can get away with. But yeah, in the comics, Taskmaster is a mercenary who is a part of the Thunderbolts eventually, I believe. And then while they're mostly a villain for a lot of the time, they do kind of intersect in that moral grey area.
He's a bad guy who really just wants to not feel like a bad guy.
Also, when I first saw him when I was younger, I did initially get confused between him and Hobgoblin, because I remember Hobgoblin from the 90s cartoon, and I was like, this guy kind of looks like Hobgoblin, but he's got a sword? Yeah. Okay. But yeah, in regards to the identity of Taskmaster in Black Widow, what theories have you all got so far? Because there is a general belief amongst people online that the identity is kind of a little bit more obvious than Marvel would want you to think it is.
There's two possibilities, isn't there? One of them is the prevailing theory that it's Rachel Weisz. That she has sort of been downplayed in all the marketing, and that always feels like a conscious decision. Like, they put her in the trailer, but she's only in it for like 2 minutes, and she's basically only calling Red Guardian fat. And it feels a little bit like they're just leaving her out because they didn't want to give away any sort of substance where people could go, well, she's obviously the bad guy. In the MCU, they're sort of obsessed, particularly around Black Widow, with the idea of duplicity. So Black Widow's first appearance, she isn't playing Black Widow, she's playing Tony Stark's
Natalie Rushman.
Yes. And then there's a lot of stuff that's like appearance versus reality that runs through all of the S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff, because obviously S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra were one and the same. So it sort of makes sense that the bad guy would be somebody who's hidden, because it's also an inversion of Black Widow herself. She was a bad guy who eventually turned out to be a good guy. And to sort of flip that on its head and have her face the opposite of herself is very MCU. Like, it just, all of it fits together.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the thing with this to bear in mind is that obviously, you can't really rule out Yelena from being another candidate, I guess, even though I've been of the opinion for a while now. I know this upsets a lot of Black Widow fans because they're obviously of the opinion that Yelena is very much, not an evil widow, but definitely one that's not, basically, you can't just throw her in and replace Natasha, because they're not the same character. In the comics, Yelena kind of has, a back and forth in terms of her allegiances. I do think in this film that they will play Yelena as a straight up reluctant hero who eventually maybe comes back in the future and honors the Black Widow legacy. I do think that's where the MCU is going with this.
I would really, really, really like the Thunderbolts rumors to be true, and for her to be the Black Widow in the
that would be really, really cool.
Whether they'll do it or not depends.
I really want that Thunderbolts movie, especially now that we have, there's the Spider-Man stuff, and obviously the whole contractual negotiation between Sony and Marvel in that area is that we have at least one or two more non-Spider-Man specific films in the MCU. Maybe they'll have Norman Osborn around for Thunderbolts. I don't know, that'd be pretty cool. Zoe, what do you think about Taskmaster in this film? Do you think it is Rachel Weisz?
So my thought is, it could be both. It could be both Tony Masters, okay, it's a slightly complicated theory, but because we obviously are in two different time periods for much of this film, there's no reason that Taskmaster doesn't start out as something from the Red Room and then becomes this hired mercenary, a different person, when there's sort of reformation with the Red Room. I think that could work. I think it'd be very interesting to sort of see, that would be a very good motivation for Black Widow to be personally affronted if it's some sort of change where Taskmaster is sort of the alias that all the people who are trained in the Red Room go under, much like Black Widow itself. I think that'd be a really interesting way to go with it because nobody would predict it quite the same as, oh, well, the person who's gotten nothing in all of the intros probably has actually a decent role. But that is, it's more something I want than something I think will necessarily happen.
I think it's a good idea, talking again in terms of the MCU as a wider thing, because they're now in the period where they're discussing legacy heroes. So obviously we'll have a new Cap, and we may get a new Black Widow. There's like the suggestion because Yana's there. So to bring that in, it is one of those things where they explore things on a wider front. They do it very specifically with characters. So I think that's very good. Yeah, I would like to agree with that as well. But whenever I agree with something and want it to happen, it never ever happens in the MCU. So
I can't even remember how we even called the I think both you and I agreed that it would be Steve dying in Endgame when James Hunt maintained that it was actually going to be Iron Man, and he proved us both
and
wrong.
then James Hunt actually did Captain America and disappeared into the past.
Yeah, exactly. He did. But yeah, the thing that I find interesting about Black Widow in this film particularly is that, you mentioned legacy there. It's a really interesting point because, more so than any other character, even though she's never really had an abundance of legacy characters in the comics, Black Widow, all her stories revolve around her past. I mean, Zoe will attest to this. The Mark Waid, Chris Samnee run is a great example. It's a fantastic run all about her going back to her past in the Red Room and coming up against the head mistress. And I've forgotten was it the Lion? As well, the Lion as well, Red Lion, he's involved in some capacity, and then the
guy that has all those pubs in Spain.
Yes, it's the one and the same.
Of course, that's what you remember.
And there was also a series drawn by Phil Noto that came out beforehand as well, which was along the similar themes. Basically, most Widow stories revolve around her past coming back to bite her in the abdomen in some way or another. And I do think it's interesting that if they could get more than 3 films out of that, I would be impressed, because I do feel as though the premise is slightly exhausted sometimes, and literally every single Widow story is all about her dealing with her past demons and having Red in a ledger and all this. So hopefully the film strives for something new, and I guess maybe Taskmaster's identity not being a straight up it's Tony Masters, which is a banter name in and of itself, is a way of kind of freshening up the formula.
There are other possibilities as well. In terms of extending the story. So we know a tiny bit about Black Widow's father now, thanks to Red Skull. He just says, Ivan was your father.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm so worried about that.
Oh,
that
God,
could be the second film where she's like, I'm going to do a Star-Lord and find Daddy, basically. Or Ivan could be Taskmaster, which is a possibility. I mean, it doesn't move like an old guy, but these are super soldiers. Or this is the most out there theory, which is online and has been talked about and was one of the inspirations for this conversation, that Taskmaster is in fact Hawkeye, who is being coerced into... Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Being coerced into hunting Black Widow, but not necessarily Black Widow specifically, but the other characters involved in the thing. Because Thaddeus Ross has him under his thumb and he's like, go and do this.
I mean, the only thing with that is that it would be another Hawkeye gets coerced and brainwashed story, and you know, Jeremy Renner, whatever your thoughts on his music career, does he deserve that as an actor?
No, but they do have a habit of repeating things, and repetition is a big MCU thing.
But I also think
I wouldn't want it to happen.
It's kind of crucial that, like, because the one thing about Black Widow that's unfortunate is that for anyone coming in with fresh eyes, which I imagine a lot of people were, I was, even with that sort of comic knowledge, like, she's very... The rest of the characters, you're given some kind of backstory for her. It's like, she was a spy. And that's sort of where it's left. It's like, oh, she was Russian, she was a spy. Now watch her do a little fight, maybe fake seduce someone. Wow. And I would really like for something to sort of... not as though she has to have some sort of reinforcement of it, but something to legitimize it. Because with a lot of characters, with Iron Man, they don't just say, oh, you know, he's a billionaire philanthropist. You see it. And I would like very much for this film to not be, here's the other Avengers, wow. But like, here's Black Widow, she could kill you. She can always kill you.
That is really a necessary point, but it's totally undermined by the fact that Black Widow is now dead.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just, it was good that happened in Endgame. I mean, it's not good, but it's a good plot point. But for this to then come after that, and you're like, there will be an element of mainstream audiences who are like, hang on a minute, she's dead, and how is she here now? Because the trailer doesn't say, this is in the past.
No.
Which mainstream audiences sometimes do need, and I mean,
Yeah, it isn't very explicit. I mean, I guess the MCU hardcore will march to every song that Marvel play, and considering most of those songs have been pretty good recently, you don't blame them. That is a concern, I guess. I mean, like I said earlier, it's very much a case of like Zoe said, mentioning the fact that Widow has kind of always been given the short end of the stick in these films. It's very much a case of like, oh, she has a great backstory, but we'll always keep it at arm's length. And when there are so many fascinating angles you can go with that, about a spy coming in from the cold and defecting to S.H.I.E.L.D., you have so much that you could do in terms of a relationship with Nick Fury, why she trusted him so much, why she's so torn up about his, fake out death in the Winter Soldier, for instance, or her relationship with Hawkeye. It's just never really been given the development or the exploration it deserves. And that's not to say that, Widow needs to have her entire character defined by, all the relationships that she has in the MCU, but it's definitely a worthwhile talking point when really ScarJo's had to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of filling in the gaps and having that unspoken history. And I would be disappointed if this film didn't really kind of expand on that in a worthwhile way.
That was the film that I thought was going to happen, to be honest. When they were like, there was whispers about it being a prequel. I thought, well, the obvious suggestion here is that they'll go back in the past and explore the Red in the Ledger, how she defected, why she has relationships with people she does, but in a way that was like obviously the film is being pitched as like Mission Impossible, Bourne, Bond, that sort of thing, which is actually pretty smart considering those films do well.
Yes.
But I just think that, and the focus will be on Black Widow. I just think that should have come first, that other film, with that same focus, because it would still have given Black Widow the legitimacy as like that she comes in and they're like, this is this like really great assassin. She's a threat. She can stand shoulder to shoulder with like a god, a big mutant beast who she wants to hide the zucchini with. That's awful. Let's not talk about that ever again. And she is essentially just a normal person with great training. I mean, they might explore the fact that she is a super soldier, but that might have already been covered too much with Bucky, and it might just be going back to retreading the same path.
Yeah, I mean, that is a frustrating thing again, because it feels as though some of the best elements of Widow's comics history have kind of already been broached by Bucky and the stuff that obviously the Captain America films covered. Yeah, I do kind of want to bring it back to Taskmaster again, though, because I feel as though even though we've talked all about, the thoughts and speculation regarding Widow's character, do you guys see Taskmaster as being a recurring villain or just a one-off? Because we touched on the Thunderbolts for a second, so I don't know if you want to explain further some of the rumors, because you'll be more clued up on some of the stuff that's going on around here.
So there's a few rumor sources that are obviously just absolute nonsense, but there are other ones that come out where they get things right, and this one I won't mention names because I can't remember it. To be perfectly honest,
got to protect your sources.
Yes, exactly. Basically spelled out all of Infinity War and Endgame's plot, and this was a long time ago, and people were like, "There's no way that's happening," and then it all did. And in amongst all of that, there was talk of a Thunderbolts movie, or in fact, a Thunderbolts trilogy with Thaddeus Rock returning. Thaddeus Rock.
That's a better name.
Ross returning and sort of leading this team of villains and anti-heroes as their answer to the Suicide Squad, but it was never going to be as dark as that because this is the MCU.
Yes.
And I genuinely think that will happen. It may now be a Disney Plus series, but they're going to need people, which means they're going to have to either go to the villains who are sort of locked up or on ice. So the Abomination, Zemo maybe, although he's probably going to not get through Bucky and Falcon. So with that in mind, maybe Taskmaster will get through. But Marvel have a habit of just like killing off villains because it adds like drama to the end of their films.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm definitely here for more Tim Roth because, like,
totally,
though The Incredible Hulk is a bit of a meh film, he is having so much fun in it, and I kind of want him to come back. That bit where he squares up to the Hulk and he's just there, like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then he gets punted into a tree. Yes. I love that bit. So, would you like to see a Thunderbolts film?
The thing is, I was just thinking about it because I'd always been like, "Oh yeah, the idea is really cool," but I'd never practically thought it through. And Venom is in I believe it's the 2007 run, one of the main boys, and thus if they played,
have you found a way to bring this back to Venom?
I mean, I'm not saying I tried, but obviously, like, when we say, they do kill off a lot of villains, but there's potential sort of for people who say Venom in Venom is not classically a villain, but could very much be like the villain enough for Thunderbolts, is my thought. I would kill for it. Do I think it's going to happen? Not entirely, because I think it's always going to involve a lot of franchising rights shenanigans, but then we got this far.
I mean, the Thunderbolts, I guess, it's not integral to have Norman Osborn involved in there. I do think it would work if they had him as an overarching influence, if you were to pool in him and have the Dark Avengers kind of operating at the same time, maybe. But that could definitely work. If they're going to have some sort of Spider-Man rights snafu and then have it all come together, I think Venom would be a great choice to have in amongst all this madness. But yeah, Taskmaster himself, it really stands out to me as like a really curious character, because we've had him basically have almost a resurgent presence for the past, I don't know if you noticed this as well, Si, the past 3 years, he's really kind of ballooned out of nowhere. He had a big kind of role, a side role rather, in the Spider-Man PS4 game, where he basically is tracking down Spider-Man and is trying, I believe it ends with him trying to bribe him into joining the Thunderbolts effectively. And then you have him having a role in the Avengers game coming out next year. And then obviously he's having a part, or they're having a part rather, in Black Widow. And that to me intimates that maybe Marvel have some sort of grander design here. They wouldn't necessarily be pushing the character as much if they weren't going to plan
they did the same with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
With the comics, when Guardians of the Galaxy sort of came to a natural end, and then they were like, this is going to be a film.
Yeah,
so
which I guess maybe, will Rachel Weisz, if she is to play Taskmaster, would they be around for long? Or will it be like a legacy kind of thing, like you both touched on, where it'll be a case of, there are many Taskmasters and they all have different identities and it's all a different thing brought up? I definitely think more so now I'm of the opinion that they will survive this film and probably have a recurring role, just based on the wider media stuff going around Marvel. I don't know what you guys think.
Let's hope so. It adds complexity anyway.
Also, on a practical level, the thing I was thinking about is Taskmaster's powers do work really well for team-ups and for, like you said, like characters having to discover themselves. So I think it would work really well for like them to just show up whenever they need essentially an elaborate villain for the team to come together for, which is maybe a little dark of me, but I'd be excited for it.
Yeah, definitely. I want to touch on a few other characters in this, because we've really focused on Vice's character, who we literally know nothing about. I don't even think they've given her a name so far in the marketing, have they?
She has, but I don't know.
Yeah, I've completely forgotten. But also, we have Red Guardian involved here, as well as Yelana's character, and they're the three culprits who I feel will probably be most. I don't think it's Red Guardian. I don't think it's David Harbour, because I feel as though there's too much of a traditional patriotic undercurrent with Red Guardian that to have him be involved in that way.
I mean, if they pretend that a guy his size is the same as the Taskmaster,
I'm worried that he's going to get got. I'm worried
I think he's going to die.
Yeah.
I think there's no shadow of a doubt in my mind that he goes.
After trying so hard as Hellboy, this is the other red character, and this is the treatment he gets. I'll be very upset.
But it's effectively just the same as Hopper in Stranger Things. The exact same storyline is going to happen, where he's like, although he's more like sort of goofy brother rather than sort of guardian.
Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, he's got it written all over him, unfortunately.
Yeah. I posit to you, maybe, given that we have Thunderbolt Ross involved in this as well, and his general animosity towards superheroes and S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of this, what if he's the one who's hired Taskmaster to try and take them all down? What if he's actually had some sort of involvement in the Red Room before and tried to replicate it over in the States? I think I really like, I've completely forgotten the fellow who plays Thunderbolt Ross now, but I genuinely think he's a great presence in the series. I thought he did the role justice in The Incredible Hulk.
William Hurt,
and I'm glad that he's come back to do it in Civil War, obviously, and then later Infinity War. I can't remember if he appeared in Endgame in any capacity.
He appears on a video feed, and Rhodey banters him off.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I want them to come. I feel as though that would be a great. I like the idea of him as a more complicated anti-hero figure, obviously. But I wouldn't mind him actually being the one responsible for having Taskmaster try to eliminate Widow, because he sees her less as an asset and more as a threat.
The Hawkeye theory actually includes the fact that Ross is the one behind it. But also, it fits with wider Black Widow and the MCU stuff, because Black Widow's secrets were released by S.H.I.E.L.D. That was like, they tried to destroy her by letting the world know what she was. There's no way General Ross didn't pick that up and was like, oh, Red Room, that's a really good idea. I'll do that. So that would fit. I mean, it's another good theory.
Do we think the Winter Soldier is going to have any sort of role in this at all? Because obviously, Zoe, they had that talk back in Civil War Winter Soldier, where she mentions how, no more bikini, she says, after she got sniped by him, doing a VIP protection thing going on. I forget where, but she does mention it in the Winter Soldier. Do you think that Bucky might have anything to do with this?
This is maybe a controversial take, but I will weep for 7 days if I see anything resembling a romance pop up in this film. Please, God, I know it's good. I know it's all fun with the Hawkeyes and the Buckies and the whatnot. Please just let her be James Bond, but without the sort of...
Aye, but she can play around with Bucky
Just have a scene in the background where Hawkeye and Bucky just neck on.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that as well. That's effectively what the Tales of Suspense comic was from the other year anyway.
I just wanted to do her work without having to go and hang out with him for 10 minutes.
I didn't mean it that way. I meant maybe in the flashbacks you do get more of that antagonistic presence from when he was the Winter Soldier. Maybe he is around a brief. Well, this is before he gets dusted. But he's on ice at Wakanda. God, I'm going back and forth. But this awkward time period they've set this film in does my head in.
Yes.
But do you think that maybe an antagonistic role could be on the horizon, even though it's just a brief?
I think they're going to really dodge putting any other Marvel character aside from the ones that we've already seen in it, because I think they're aware that if people feel like the focus has been taken off Black Widow, at least for me personally, I'm gonna go Hulk. I'm gonna go absolutely wild on it. So for once, no romance, please. I beg you.
I would like him to come in as a sort of Snape-like teacher in Red Room flashbacks, where he's just oh yeah. with his ruler.
Defense against the large arms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much all the theories that we kind of come up with for Taskmaster. It's an interesting thing here because obviously if there were any other villain, I think Marvel would just be completely transparent. And the fact that at the end of the day, it's probably going to be obvious who this is. I don't think it's David Harbour's character. I don't think it's Ilana, because sincerely, I do believe that they're gearing her for a more legacy kind of role in the future. Either that or she'll die in the film.
Yes.
One of the two. Rachel Weisz, given just how little she's had to do with any of the marketing, would kind of seem as though she's at least one of the Taskmasters. If there is going to be, I do quite like the multiple identity theory, I have to admit, because that would open up recurring appearances in the future. But yeah, please let us know. Actually, no, before I do that, final conclusive, who do you think Taskmaster is?
Natasha.
We've gone through the scary door now.
Controversial.
Zoe.
I think there's a little bit of Taskmaster in all of us, but also probably the
real Taskmaster is the friends we made along the way.
Very poignant.
We've concluded this way.
Very, very poignant. Yeah, please let us know who you think Taskmaster is down in the comments below. That's me tasking you to do it. You should go master it. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well, because it really, really does help us out. You can find more stuff like this at whatculture.com, more news, lists, and articles, that is. You can follow me on Twitter at YouMoonsThings. You can follow Simon on Twitter at
Ty Gallagher.
You can follow Zoe on Twitter at
Emma Skill. I might even tweet today.
Oh, wow. That is an event. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.